At the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center and with our good friends over at Deepwater Wind. We start along the 4 o'clock hour with Speaker of the House Nick Mattiello. Then we've got the money man, Gary Sass, and then we're up to Brown University on a joint venture between Brown and Hasbro on a pretty interesting NIH-funded initiative to really reinvent how seniors interact with virtual reality to some degree. So let me introduce Nick Mattiello, Speaker of the House. Mr. Speaker, you in the House?
I am.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So in the olden days of the General Assembly, it would kind of end in June, and then you'd take some time off. You'd revert back to your full-time job. And nowadays, that just doesn't happen. This is the unending session.
Not so much anymore. It's become, I've been there 10 plus years now, and it's becoming more and more a full-time job, and I get drawn in every day. I love it, but I have a day job and a law practice to try to run, so it gets challenging.
We had the longest session, or one of the longest sessions, and then we've been right into this Paw Sox stadium funding debate that seems to be going on. It's only been, I think, 2 or 3 years. It seems like it's been 10 years of this dialogue. Where are we now?
I'm not sure. I hate to put it this way, but your guess is as good as mine. There's a proposal on the table. The Senate's really invested a lot of time in holding hearings. We've held a couple of hearings in the House. You know, we'll see. We'll see. I'm waiting to see what, if anything, the Senate comes up with, and we'll certainly assess anything that they send us. But I've suggested that I think the deal needs to be reworked. We have to look at the master contract. The legislation is just an outline.
Right, absolutely.
And it's the contract afterwards. And we've had situations in the past where we've passed legislation, it goes to Commerce or EDC at the time, and it gets messed up pretty good. So I'm very cautious of that. The devil's in the details on deals such as this. So I'm not sure where this is going right now, and we'll continue studying it and assessing, but I've suggested that the governor and the Commerce Department should renegotiate it. I've been talking to my constituents, my colleagues are talking to their constituents, and there's a lot of skepticism right now. I'm not sure that it's being supported by the public, which I would absolutely require before even considering a deal such as this.
Yeah, obviously we had engaged John Della Volpe up at Harvard to do some polling, and that polling came back with very, very little public support. The advocates or the owners say, well, that polling question wasn't fair, blah, blah, blah. Well, really, the numbers look significantly higher. I thought House Finance did a very good job unveiling, which really hadn't come out previously, a couple big ticket items. One is long-term improvements to the facility. Yes. Whose obligation is that? And I think that was Chairman Abney and Gia Russo both tackled that issue. And the other is, what happens to McCoy? Pawtucket's going to be all in on this. They're going to use they're in the couch pulling out the change to be able to fund this through the Pawtucket Development Corporation, and how are those issues going to get dealt with as well?
Yeah, well, you have to protect Pawtucket's interest. I understand their desire to do this, but you have to protect Pawtucket's interest. And regarding the polling, I could tell you that I've talked to a lot of constituents, as have my colleagues, and everybody loves the Paw Sox. Everybody wants them to stay, but they're telling me no public dollars. So the deal has to be looked at. It has to be reworked. And if folks want to realistically make a deal happen, they're going to have to rework it and restructure it and make it something that the folks that are ultimately going to be responsible for it are willing to do. And right now, I'm not seeing that.
Senate Finance Chair who's been a huge advocate of this, has even raised the questions about not seeing the Paw Sox financials. Isn't that a must? I mean, how does the Auditor General, how does bonding take place? How does any of those things take place without some review of the financials, whether they're done in closed or done in public? I mean, I think anytime you're asking for tens of millions of dollars and you're not willing to open up your books, you reach some problems.
Absolutely. I think that has to absolutely be done. I think the Auditor General may or may not have looked at the books. I just am not sure. It was something that has been talked about. I'm going to insist that someone from the administration also looks at the book, someone from commerce that has a lot of the tools and the expertise look at the book, so it's not one set of eyes, and you have at least 3 good sets of eyes on them for an opinion, because they're suggesting that a lot of the information is proprietary and they don't want to disseminate it to the public. So I at least have to have 3 qualified people look at the information. We'll get their opinion, and that'll determine if any other information is necessary or other steps are necessary. But I agree, you want to make the public your partner, you have to disclose everything to the public that the public expects. And that's essentially what happens in these deals. The public becomes a partner with the Paw Sox. So they've got to be a willing partner, and they've got to be fully informed before they go in. And I'm going to do my role to make sure that before we go forward with anything, if we go forward, that we in fact accomplish that for the public.
Listen, you're a high-powered attorney, and isn't the art of any deal is that if it's a good deal, you take the other side just as well as that side? So the fact that they won't take the backstop obligation of, hey, if this thing comes apart, they won't have any financial responsibility. Can we flip it around? We'll build the stadium, they do the $38 million, but they're responsible on the other side.
Well, you can restructure it a lot of different ways. Obviously, risk mitigation is important, and I'm looking at risk mitigation from the public's point of view. So, you know, I share the public sentiment that I love the Paw Sox. I like them being in the state. They've become part of our fabric, but the financial deal has to make sense, and the public has to understand it, like it, appreciate it, and want to engage in it. And if they're not of that mindset collectively, I mean, you're never going to have unanimous opinion, but if they're not of that opinion collectively, then it shouldn't go forward. So it's up to the public.
One of the big, I think, pushbacks that you hear from people is, and whether this is fair or not, I think a lot of people do think it's fair, is that, listen, the ownership of this group is the most well-heeled human beings in America. I mean, literally, their net worth collectively. Is this really something that that public dollars in a period of time where we're looking at a significant deficit in the state budget, and we'll get to that in a second, really should be investing in? Or is it, hey guys, we love you, we'll help you on some aspects of this deal, but this is your private concern, not ours?
Well, that's a legitimate point of view and a good question. So we certainly have a lot of competing interests for current dollars. The question is it going to require any new dollars? If you ask the folks at the Paw Sox, they would say it's revenue neutral and it helps revitalize Pawtucket, and that's certainly a state interest. So whether or not it costs us, that's subject to debate. But we certainly have our challenges,
yeah,
and we certainly have a lot of demands on our public dollars, and we certainly have to be very cautious on how we expend them, and I will do my best to fulfill my responsibility to protect the state's interest.
If you're a betting man, we're flying to Vegas tomorrow. What are you betting on the Paw Sox?
I don't bet. I don't bet. Let's see where the process takes us. The process will be very open, very fair, which the openness and the public involvement is critical in my opinion, and it'll be very fair, and we'll see where it takes us. It's going to take us where it should take us.
Likelihood of this taking place before January 1 is diminishing by the moment.
Yes.
I think in fairness to everybody.
As I've said, the Senate's really taken the lead on this issue, and I don't see them doing anything. So I know we're not going to. We're not planning anything in the House of Representatives, and I'm not hearing or seeing the Senate doing anything. So I would doubt that.
Senator Sheehan today came out strongly opposed to it and said, pretty much mirroring your words, we need a whole new deal if the state of Rhode Island's taxpayers are going to be involved in this before moving forward.
I heard that. I suspect he's hearing the same thing that myself and many of my colleagues are hearing. You know, at the end of the day, it's our state collectively, each individual citizen collectively. We make up the state of Rhode Island, and our opinion is controlling, and we're all hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm hearing we love them. We want them to stay, but no tax dollars. So I'm sure Senator Sheehan is hearing the same thing.
Maybe we should take them by eminent domain and make them like the Green Bay Packers, and everybody can just invest in them. Let's jump over to the state deficit. Revenues have been off a little bit, expenses up. The governor pushed some stuff off into this budget, creating a lot of complexity. How are you feeling about balancing the books, or waiting for the administration to let you know their ideas?
We'll balance the books, and it'll be a good budget. They're getting more and more difficult. We do have a structural deficit. Our revenues increase at a faster rate than our expenses increase at a faster rate than our revenues, and that's been the situation for a long time. Our unemployment rate's coming down. The state's doing better in a lot of ways, but we still have that structural deficit that we have to deal with. And we have great staff in the House, and they're working on it. The governor's folks are working on it. She'll present a budget, and we'll take it from there. And but we'll have a good budget. It's not going to be without its challenges, though.
Right into an election year.
Right into an election year, but I said it'll be a good budget. We'll have tax relief for our citizens, and we'll make sure that we have our priorities in order. We'll take care of our citizens, and we'll deal with our expenses, so just like everybody has.
There's a big danger coming out of Washington, potentially on this federal budget being proposed by the Trump administration, that they would eliminate the deduction for local and state taxes. That hits northeastern states significantly harder. Is there any thought process going into that and how we deal with that?
No, we certainly hope that that does not pass. I
Yeah.
mean, how we deal with it, that's a federal deduction. I'm not sure. I haven't given that a lot of consideration. I don't know that we can deal with it, but certainly some of the proposals are not friendly to states in the Northeast. There's
Yeah.
no question about it. So I'm hoping that when they all get together, that we do have some tax
The blue
relief.
states get hit a little bit harder than those red states down in the southwest.
Well, that seems to be the consensus. So, hopefully that they come together. We have a great federal delegation. We should all be very proud, to have statesmen like we do, Jack Reed, Sheldon Whitehouse, Dave Cicilline, and Jim Langevin. We're very fortunate. I know they're hard at work, and hopefully they will make changes before anything passes. I think I would love to see some tax relief for middle-class families. I think that could really help the economy, but it has to be done well, appropriately, fairly. You can't. I agree that you can't give all the tax relief to the top 1%, and so let's see what they come up with, and hopefully it's fair, and hopefully it'll be good for Rhode Island. I am concerned, though.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the proposals coming out of Washington right now are not favorable to Rhode Island.
UHIP, federal court judge Will Smith intervened last week, named Deming Sherman the special master to really take control of a major state function. I think it's a little bit embarrassing for Rhode Island that we're in a situation like this. God bless Deming Sherman. How do we get out of this mess?
It's going to take some time. It took a long time to create the situation we have, and it's going to take a while to get out of it, unfortunately. You need to put the right people into these leadership positions. They matter. I've always said I'm happy to pay more for a good director. Good directors can help you, and bad directors can really cost you a disproportionately large sum of money. We have our share of problems there. The new leadership over there, I believe, is doing better and moving us in the right direction. But it is embarrassing when the federal court has to appoint a special master to come in.
I mean, I think I was a kid when the federal courts came in on the prison system back in the 70s or early 80s when the last time this happened. One of the things that we see, oftentimes Saul Kaplan's here on Monday afternoons when we talk about the technology behind UHIP. And one of the things that still worries me is we're sort of fighting, one-handed. We're maybe putting competent people in, but we're not putting technologists in. And Deloitte is de facto our technology partner or enemy, depending on the situation, and we don't have the technology expertise on our side to be able to really challenge some of their failures.
I think that's the problem. When the state ordered this program change, we needed people in the administration that could communicate with Deloitte.
Right.
You have to be able to ask for what you need, and their responses have to be responsive to your request in order for the system to work. And you have to run through all the examples and all the different scenarios, and you have to make sure as the program's being built that it does what it's supposed to do. You don't wait 5 years and get a box and say, all right, plug it in. That's not how these interfaces work.
No, definitely not.
So there's a lot of responsibility on Deloitte's part, I would imagine. There's a lot of responsibility on the part of the state, and they have to learn and be able to communicate. But you're right, in order to be able to communicate with a Deloitte or any other company, you've got to have the expertise on staff, and you've got to be able to be a partner in that integration. And I don't believe that has happened, and that's why we have the problems we have today. And once they're created, it's going to take a little time to get out of. So,
and I also think states are at a disadvantage. Listen, young, smart technologists want to go to the private sector. They want to go to, whether it's GE or Upserve or Amazon or whomever, and that's who's going to pay the premium to go and recruit those young men and women.
Yes, but if you need them, you're gonna pay for them.
We better get them.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get the job done. I don't think it's fair to say, the young workforce wants to go to the hipper companies.
Right.
If you're gonna do the program, you've got to hire them. And don't forget, we've made this in the last few years. We've made this program a lot more complicated. We interconnected all of the departments.
Right.
And it sounded like that was going to be great and cut back on our labor costs, but in the end it became so complicated that nobody understood it, nobody knew how to operate it, and it just turned into a mess.
But we're only out $400 or $500 million, so we'll work our way through
it. That's a concern. I mean, that's easy to say, Josh, but it's a lot of taxpayer money, a lot of it federal, but there's a lot of taxpayer money there. So this has to be straightened out. I'm going to give Chairwoman Pat Serp a lot of credit. Our oversight committee is doing yeoman's work. We're trying to keep the public informed as to what's happening at UHIP, and we'll continue to do so.
Is this the first time the legislature, and I'm going to talk about it within the context of the POSOX hearings and within the context of UHIP and DCYF, is this really the first time that the legislature is really, for the first time, taken on that role as oversight and actually had real hearings and hold people accountable and bring them in and put the bright light on them and uncover some of these issues?
Yes, if you remember, before separation of powers, we actually used to have representatives and senators in the different agencies.
Right.
So they would report back, and we had a good idea of what was going on in the administration. Not so much anymore. So oversight is a wonderful tool to get ourselves informed as to what's going on in the administration and in state government, and to inform the public. So that's a committee that's doing great work. I'm very proud of our chairwoman and all the members on oversight, and we will continue to work to keep the public informed.
Let's talk about it. We're gonna call this section "Blame Larry." So listen, as Speaker, you've gotten rid of the master lever.
Yeah.
You've passed major ethics reform. You are rolling back the auto tax. Why aren't people happier?
You know,
Blame Larry?
Blame Larry.
Yeah.
Larry, it's your fault. And anyone that knows Larry knows that we say that with all affection. You know, I think a lot of people are happy, and a lot of people not so much. Rhode Islanders are justifiably
frustrated?
Skeptical.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated, and they should be, because they've been let down so many times in the past. We have had a lackluster economy.
Yeah.
Folks are forced to settle for income that they've probably had 5 years ago, maybe less. You know, it's difficult out there, and all of the problems that we're dealing with were created long before me. We also reduced a lot of taxes. I mean, I'm not going to go through the list, but since I've been there, we've done nothing but reduce taxes, try to reduce fees. I mean, a simple thing like the beach fees.
Right.
But, that's one of our assets. So you have to treat people appropriately and respectfully so that they can enjoy the beauties of the state of Rhode Island. We have done nothing but that, but I understand that people are rightfully frustrated, and my job is as frequently as I can just to try to keep moving the ball in the right direction and reminding folks of the things that we're doing so that they get the proper perspective. They've almost shut their ears and their minds to the state going in the right direction because they're so frustrated from the mistakes of the past. I think that's changed. I think we've turned the corner, and I think we're moving in the right direction. A lot of the folks you hear at the business community knows that myself and my team, we've been a backstop against bad ideas, and we're moving the state in the right direction, and we're pushing hard. So we're all trying to, and we're doing it collaboratively. We've been working well with the governor on a lot of initiatives, well with the Senate on a lot of initiatives, and we have our share of disagreements also, but the state is moving in the right direction, slowly but surely. Do we have a lot of work to do? Absolutely. And are we going to keep pushing? Absolutely. And I look forward to a time when the public says, wow, those guys said it, and they kept their word, and they got it done. And we have to earn that. That doesn't come overnight. When you have a history of problems, that doesn't come overnight. So I accept the challenge, and we'll keep pushing along.
Mattiello Law Office is a thriving business, wildly profitable. I see a building right out there above our heads, the Superman building. Could see the big M right up there on the top. Is that a possible new location from moving up from Cranston up to Superman building? I pitched the Superman building pretty much to everybody who comes in. So what's going to happen with that building? It's 4 or 5 years vacant. It's the tallest building in the state. What do we need to do?
I don't know. It's unfortunate when an iconic building like that is vacant. The world is changing, and sometimes some of these buildings just become too dated. I don't know if that's the case for that building, but we'll see. I know that the Commerce Corp has their eye on it, and then they're trying to work with different parties to bring someone there. We will see, but I think time has not been kind to that building. The new buildings are so much more efficient, and I think companies today want all the modern amenities, and they want new structures. And as iconic and beautiful as it is, it does have a
lovely dining room up there. Last question. We're going into, it's like the election of 16 never ended. We're already headed towards 17. The amount of frustration, energy in national politics is obviously has an effect, I think, in every state. Wildly competitive Virginia governor's race, I think, tomorrow. It's across the country, the Trump-Clinton. Clinton's still the most famous Democrat on the national play. How do you get things done this session with the backdrop of all the politics? You got Democrats running against Democrats. You got 87 Republicans potentially running for governor. It's about as complex a year as we've seen in a long time.
The election year is always very different than the non-election year. I can tell you that. People start acting very, very differently. It's one of the things that sometimes saddens me. I believe that you govern during your term to govern, and at election time, it's all fair.
Right.
Everybody has their own interest in running, winning, and you should do what you need to do to run your race appropriately. But when it's time to govern, you should govern. So I'm going to come in next session, and I'm going to continue to work as hard as I can on behalf of our constituents, and I'll work with my colleagues who are great. But we all act differently in election years. There's no question about it. But our responsibility is to govern. We were elected to a 2-year term, most of us, all of us in the General Assembly, and the second year is half of our term. So we will fulfill our obligation.
Will we see some surprises? I don't know. You don't need to name names, and you may not even know yet. Will we see some people that have been there and just say, "Listen, I can't take I can't take the heat anymore. I got to go do some other things. Will we see an unusual year of people not running again?
No, I don't think so. I think that it'll be typical. I mean, there comes a time when it's appropriate for you to retire from your public service and to go on and fulfill your obligations to your private life and your family. And, you know, that time will come for each and every one of us.
How long have you been in the House?
This is my 11th year.
So T.F. Green was only in like 50-something years between all his different elected offices. So you've got like another 40 years at it.
Not 40.
We've never seen a year like this. The amount of stress that people are already demonstrating and frustration as candidates, etc. Aaron Ruggenberg and Dan McKee, very unusual situation, sitting Democratic lieutenant governor and one of your colleagues. And
Yes.
You know, you work closely with Aaron on a number of issues.
Yes.
An unusual situation.
That's it. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I will say that Dan McKee does a good job. He's our current lieutenant governor, and Aaron I've worked with closely in the House. He's a hard-working young man that tries to better public policy every chance he gets. So that'll be an interesting race. A little unusual.
Yeah, a little unusual. Listen, I want to thank you for taking all the time. Stay right here. We're going to be right back in 1 second. I think the money man, Gary Sass, is up next. He'll have lots of commentary on all of your commentary, and we'll be right back at it in just 1 second.